Hey guys, Coach Jason. Hope you're all doing well. So I want to talk about some of the if you're training for a half marathon and this is your very first one. I want to go over a couple of things. Four of some of the most important things that you need to know, and I really encourage you to do. There's some of the most important things if you want to not only have a success in your first shot at a half marathon, but set yourself up to run longer races like the marathon or even shorter races like the 5K and 10K, but also recover afterward, because the longer the race you're running, the longer recovery time it's going to take. And with the longer the race that you want to run, the longer the build up generally should be. Now, can you run a half marathon with in 6 weeks or 8 weeks? Yeah. Do I recommend it? No. And that applies even stronger for the marathon. I don't recommend anybody training for the marathon with less than a 12-week training cycle, but that's just my opinion from experience. And I have coached people from for the last 2 decades, from races from 400 meters all the way up to the marathon at all different levels. So, but the reason why I recommend a longer training cycle is again the flip side, post race, to help you recover. Also help. One of the most important, or the most important thing that you're building for a race like a marathon is the long run if it's your first time, and it's one of the most important things for the half marathon too. So let's stick with the half marathon today as well, because it does set you up for a lot of other races. So number one, one of the most important things is, the first thing I would recommend you do is go to a specialty running store and get fitted for the right shoes. Okay, very important. And because training for the half marathon, it also depends on where you're training. If you're training on dirt, if you're training on pavement, setting yourself up with the right shoes is of utmost importance. Okay, and I can't emphasize this enough. I really can't. You want to make sure that you're in the right shoes. And if you have the ability to get a second pair, alternating the shoes every day is a really good idea. It generally takes about 48 hours for the shoes. Having worked in a running specialty store for quite a few years when I was in college in New York, one of the things that you learn is it takes about 48 hours for the cushion of a shoe to kind of get back to its original state or shape. So if you're wearing the same shoe every day, the rate of deterioration is going to accelerate that much more. But if you're alternating between 2 pairs, you get a lot more life out of both pairs. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you can do it, I highly encourage you to do it. But if you can't, you can't. That's number one, because you want to set yourself up with the right equipment from the start. Okay, and the other thing is how long are you going to give yourself to train? Let's say you give yourself 12 weeks. And some of the things that are important to keep in mind is, one, it's got to be a gradual progression, okay? And let's take the long run, for example. Let's say you're starting with 4 miles and then 6 miles. I highly recommend folks that are running running their absolute first half marathon to build up to at least a 10-mile long run. And if you could do it twice, that's really great, okay? As you get more experience, you kind of work your way towards a 13-mile long run to kind of equal the half marathon. And for the more fit and much more experience, you kind of work your way up longer than 13. Some do 16, some do 18. It really depends on their ability levels and fitness and whether they're going to transition up to the marathon as well. And the longer that long run is, the easier it is to kind of transition upward. But it's also relevant if you're training 5K, 10K downward. And it's either way, you're building a good aerobic foundation. And the longer you can build an aerobic foundation, the better you're setting yourself up to run well, particularly for the half marathon. So, gradual progression, okay? Building your long run. Building in a second run in the week that's, let's say, an intermediate run, okay? So let's say you're going to build yourself up to, let's say, 40 miles per week, okay? Generally, it's about a 20% ratio, whereas if you're running a 40-mile week, your long run should be at about 8 miles, which is 20% of the weekly volume. If you can get up to 9 or 10, great, but I wouldn't pressure yourself to do it. I wouldn't exceed 10 miles on a 40-mile week, but I would definitely encourage you to get to that on a 50-mile week if you're running 50. And if you're running 50, I would encourage you to try 11 or 12 miles, but not force yourself to do it if it doesn't feel right. But so that's one of the things. But an intermediate run is another run during the week. That's about 75% of your long run. So if your long run is 8 miles, that's about 6 miles. Okay? If the long run's 10 miles, it's, let's say about 7.5 miles or something like that. The idea is to be on your feet for an extended period of time twice during the week, particularly when you're training for a 13-mile race. it comes in handy. And it also helps make the shorter runs, the shorter runs help you recover from the longer runs, but it also puts you in a position to start incorporating speed development, strides, hills, and so on. And if I could say one thing about the long run itself, going back to the long run, simulate. And what I mean by simulate, whenever you sign up for a half marathon, take a look at the course map and if it's available. If it's a rolling half marathon, I encourage you to do some of your or all of your long runs over rolling to get used to the fluctuation in pace, but also the undulating terrain. So rolling marathons, they beat up your legs a little bit more than flat ones do, or half marathons too. So preparing yourself for something like that is really, really key. Okay. On the flip side, if it's a flat half marathon, I encourage you to do a lot of your long runs and pace, race pace running or whatever it is on the flats to help simulate it as much as possible. It'll make life easier for you if you do that, okay? But I could also say even if you're running a flat half marathon, doing some of the long runs on the rolling hills can only help you build leg strength. So it's not going to be counterproductive if you're doing some hilly long runs in preparation for a flat half marathon. So something to keep in mind. Simulating as much as you can is a good idea, okay? Again, it all goes back to gradual progression too, okay? And if you're doing a 12-week training block, I encourage you to try breaking it into 4-week blocks, okay? 3 4-week blocks so you can adapt every 4 weeks. Take a look in the description down below. I'll put a couple of half marathon training programs, one for beginners, and then I'll also put my other 4. I'll put sub 2 hours, sub 145, sub 130, and sub 115. They're all fully detailed, 12 to 16 weeks. Every day, every week is broken down in full detail. So if you're going to watch them from beginning to end because I explain everything too. And that way you have an idea of what training looks like, okay? And also I'm going to put my most recent videos, a 50-mile week, 60, 70, and 80. But maybe I'll stick with 50 and 60 for now, and because they're kind of on the lower end of the volume, particularly if you're running your first half marathon. And if you haven't run anything before, I would not exceed 50. I would kind of keep it at 40, between 40 and 50. But if you're transitioning upward, then a 50 or 60 mile week might be more relevant or beneficial to you. So I'll put them in the description down below too, so you could take a look at how I break everything down, so you could see what a 50-mile week looks like, okay, for longer races. And I actually have them for shorter races too. So let's go back to it. Get yourself a new pair of shoes. And 2 if you can, okay? One that's going to protect your feet, protect your joints, and set you up to recover well as well. 2, build up that long run and that semi-long run too, okay? And 3, everything's got to be a gradual progression. Now, last but not least, I want to talk about just doing some workouts, okay? Let's say your half marathon, you're looking to run 145 for the half marathon, which is about 8 minutes per mile, okay? So doing some workouts. Now your easy runs are going to be slower than that, but the workout itself, let's say you want to incorporate some lactic threshold or tempo running. So doing something like 2 times 10 minutes at goal pace at 8 minutes per mile, okay, and then building towards 20 minutes consecutively, and then maybe 2 by 15 minutes, and then 30 minutes consecutively, okay. And you can do these. You can do that with week 2, week 4, week 6, week 8, and it'll give you a little bit of idea of what your goal race pace feels like, and if it feels comfortable enough. Another thing you could do is do a time trial, okay, of either a mile or 2 miles or 3 miles, and let that time trial determine your fitness and how you should set your training paces appropriately. Now, I don't recommend doing a time trial until you've run at least 6 weeks, or even 8 weeks or 10 weeks of running. So if you're starting this, if you want to do it from scratch, disregard that. Just see where the paces, take you, and just train to finish the half marathon, and let that determine, your fitness, and then what you can set your training paces accordingly. But if you want to train for a specific goal, then I encourage you to do a time trial, provided you've done running prior to training for a half marathon. So it's something to keep in mind too. So half marathon race pace workout is key, but I also recommend multi-pace training. So I'm doing some stuff at 10K pace, 5K pace, 3K pace, and mile pace, okay? The shorter, faster stuff will help you become more efficient, practice good running form, because the longer the races get, particularly the half and the full marathon, the more conserving energy becomes that much more important. So energy conservation is key, particularly in those longer races, because it's not like a 5K or a mile where you can come back the next week if you have a bad day. These races take longer to recover from, and it's important to kind of be precise, or as precise as possible, with your training. Now, it also goes with fitting it around your lifestyle. If you have a job, you have a family, I get it, totally get it. It happens to all of us. So how do you set up your training so that you can manage it with your life and your job and everything else? That's another key. How do you do that too? So giving you some training programs so that you can kind of look and see. And all of my training programs also have a day off either every week or every other week or every third week. So for reasons like that too, to have a full day of recovery. I always have an easy day on Monday with my training programs to kind of help you ease back into the week and not have to worry about training hard. So, but you'll see how everything's laid out. There's the kind of logic behind it, but fitting your training around your lifestyle is important too, and how to do it. So if you want me to do a video on that, by the way, I'll be more than happy to do another video on kind of fitting training around your lifestyle. Just leave some feedback in the comments down below. Or if there's other types of videos you want me to do, let me know in the comments too. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome. If you're a coach or an athlete and you want really good content, a lot of training info, hit that subscribe button right now. I have almost 200 videos out, fully detailed training programs from the half mile all the way up to the marathon, workouts galore, all kinds of stuff. This channel's for you if you want a lot of running info. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I really appreciate your support. And hitting the subscribe button really helps other people know that this channel exists. So hope this was helpful. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.